we wanted to share some of these stories, these milestones and achievements that have been achieved despite the barriers like the hostile environment, to showcase and uphold the resilience, the creativity, the joyfulness of communities who persevered and pushed through during the pandemic despite having very little. This is what we call the COVID response in West Yorkshire of migrant communities.
My name is Piran Birani. I'm part of the Zimbabwe Human Rights Organization, the Leeds Unity Center, which is based in Leeds, PAFRAS, also a charity based in Leeds, and I'm also a member of the racial justice community. I'm here to talk to you about our report on migrant communities-led responses to COVID-19 in West Yorkshire. The pandemic brought to the surface already existing social, economic, and health inequalities, fear, suspicion, and threats around authorities and the surveillance of people subject to immigration control via schools, banks, landlords, the NHS, and the police forces has had a devastating effect on the absence of trust and the fearfulness from the migrant communities toward the authorities. Lack of information in diverse languages and in simplified English with regards first to the lockdown rules, secondly, free testing and medical attention related to COVID-19, and lastly but not least, access to vaccines has prevented migrants from seeking vital help from authorities, including life-saving medical treatment. This has been made worse by the digital divide, in which many migrants, in particular those seeking asylum, they do not have access to internet, smartphones, data, and all the IT skills to access this information, including being unable to book appointments with their local GPs.
My name is Tasfa Alam. I'm part of the Eritrean community here in Leeds and a PhD researcher at the University of Leeds. Today, I'm here to talk about our new report, which is coming this Thursday, on migrant communities-led response to the pandemic in West Yorkshire region. The state and its institutions expose migrants, particularly asylum seekers and undocumented, to the virus through their national policies and ideologies. People seeking asylum who arrived since the pandemic have been subjected to unsafe and unsanitary conditions, which have increased their level of exposure to COVID-19. We have seen firsthand and through our interviews the stress and anxiety caused by asylum seekers not knowing what was going to happen, and as they were swiftly moved to different locations without their knowledge, without their prior warning and notice, and the lack of information in diverse language related to the virus and the lockdown rules and restrictions. Mental health was also exacerbated by having to share a small room with many people, unable to social distance, lack of access to soap and antibacterial gel, face masks, as well as basic sanitary products. The Racial Justice Network delivered several of these items to asylum seekers across Yorkshire as part of its COVID-19 campaign. The effects of colonial legacies will continue to exist domestically and strive under the hostile environment policies. And we need to resist those by coming together and showing our solidarity to our fellow migrants. Thank you.
In March 2020, the first national lockdown was announced. Among the rules was the inability to see anyone outside your immediate household. Those who have no family or wider networks and living alone were forced into further isolation. Community hubs, libraries, charity buildings, among others, were closed.
Hi, my name is Wendy Lewis. I am part of Free to Be Me LGBT community organisation. I'm here to talk about our report on migrant community-led responses to COVID-19 in West Yorkshire. Lack of engagement and due care of authorities and government institutions. Local authorities were slow to adopt, listen and meet the needs of the most marginalised in their locations during the ongoing pandemic. Migrant, racially minoritized communities with multiple and complex needs were overlooked and struggled to have their voices heard due to the lack of access to decision makers. Decision-making spaces are not representative of affected communities. A significant area neglected by local and national authorities is the impact the pandemic has had on migrant children and youth. Gaps in education attainment is not only prevalent, but has widened as children whose parents could not afford gadgets or internet were left out and unable to continue their studies, whilst others continue as best they could, but often without understanding the task in hand, given language barriers and or not being familiar with the curriculum content. Free school meal vouchers were not offered to migrant destitute children at the beginning of the lockdown as part of the No Resource to Public Funds, NRPF. This was challenged and vouchers were eventually offered, but with less value or parents struggling to access the vouchers or money because they were not allowed to have money deposited into their Home Office issue cards.
Hi, my name is Adela Santi, and I'm part of a collective of migrant parents and carers, and I'm here to talk about our report on migrant communities-led response to COVID-19 in West Yorkshire, resisting and surviving as a community. There was a tremendous amount of survival skills and innovation going unnoticed during lockdown that continues until today. Many community advocates delved in translation, telephone calling, and dissemination through informal networks within the diaspora to update their communities of public health guidelines, COVID-19 treatment, vaccination access without being paid or receiving any form of formal recognition. We want to highlight the spiritual warmth and gentleness as friends and comrades took on family roles and responsibilities. Mutual aid groups among migrant communities provided a sense of togetherness and a sense of community, as well as practical skills and knowledge exchanges, financial and food contributions and support. Most importantly, we have learned throughout the pandemic the act of loving, caring, selflessness, and resistance emanating from the migrant community to assist and support